are joined today by
J.R. Romano.
Hey, everybody. J.R. Romano here with the Connecticut Republican Party. I am actually just back from a trip to Taiwan. I was fortunate enough to be asked by our national committee chairwoman, Ronna McDaniel, to represent the party on a trip to Taiwan. It was a great experience. I got the opportunity to meet the president of Taiwan, and we talked politics, and it's actually really interesting to learn of another country's process. And one of the things that was most fascinating, because we got to meet the two parties that are there, but how both of them decide their primaries, and they're actually in the middle of a primary right now, but how both of them decide their primaries is through public opinion polls. Imagine that. They literally, the two parties come together and they say, okay, at this date, May 10th, whoever's leading in the public opinion poll is our nominee. I just thought that was crazy. It was wild. Anyway, so I'm freshly back. It was a 12-hour flight, but I'm glad to be back here in the state of Connecticut, and I get to come back to a state that's decided to raise taxes, a lot of taxes. I'm sitting here looking at a list, and this is a sampling. And I'm actually going to be bringing on Chris Davis a little bit later to talk more extensively on this. And I'm going to go through some of these with him, but I'm just going to read the list here of several what the Democrats are proposing. There's a 1% tax on prepared foods at grocery stores and restaurants, so 1% restaurant tax, 10-cent fee on paper and plastic bags. So basically, I guess if you can bring your own bags to the store. Otherwise, you'd have to walk out with it, holding everything in your arms. Increase annual filing fee for LLCs and LLPs from $20 to $80. A 2% tax on capital gains. Now, why this one's dangerous, and Chris and I are going to talk a little bit about it. Well, I'll wait to that part where we can talk about why the capital gains one's dangerous. Expanding sales tax on parking. Expanding sales tax on safety apparel. So basically what that means is if you work in a factory, you want safety shoes or goggles or something that's the fire retardant or anything like that. You're going to get charged an extra expand the sales tax to include those items that are designed to keep working people safe. I'm going to repeat that. Democrats have gotten to the point where they're expanding sales tax on equipment that keeps us safe. So essentially, our safety has turned into a revenue source. This is insane. They're going to expand sales tax to include dry cleaning and laundry services, expand sales tax to include interior design services, eliminate a 5-year tax credit for STEM graduates designed to help students pay off college debt. Yeah, that's an interesting one. A new 6.35% on ride-sharing services. We talk about that a little bit with Chris. Increase, I love this one because I may be going to the movies today, actually, to see the new Marvel movie. But anyway, increase the sales tax on movie tickets from 6 to 6.35%. So, all those families out there, those working class families that have little kids, maybe more than 1 or 2 kids, and they want to go see the latest Disney movie, well, it's going to cost you. Ned Lamont says, I want my share. So take joy and amusement out of your children's life because the Democrats in this state can't understand how to manage a budget. Sales and use tax on marijuana. Okay. So they're going to legalize marijuana. An excise tax on marijuana. What that basically means is they're going to tax it from the distributor to the retail seller. Increase the sales tax on digital downloads from 1% to 6.35%. So what that basically means is that if you buy a movie from Netflix or rent a movie from Netflix or a song, Connecticut's going to take 6.35%. They're going to increase the e-cigarette excise tax to 50%. That's the tax that the wholesaler to the retail pays. An e-cigarette liquid tax at wholesale. Another one. Nice. Raise minimum markup for cigarettes from 8% to 18% and increase tax on alcohol. Yeah. And by the way, those are only a couple of I think it's over 100, increase in taxes or new taxes that you and your family would pay. I think it is absolutely disturbing when our state is losing jobs. It is not a state that anyone wants to move to. The only reason that our economy has grown at 1% is because of the defense industry, and Chris Davis, Representative Chris Davis, and I get into that. I don't even know what to say to this. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is that there's so many people in this state who are going to suffer. And it's almost this like wave of disappointment because particularly within the Democratic Party, they lack the courage to actually take on their special interests like the unions in order to kind of be honest with the taxpayers, the people that are actually paying the bill. I mean, when you look at the fact, like, it doesn't seem like a big deal to say movie tickets from 6% to 6.35%. Now, I will tell you that that actual brick and mortar movie houses, where the movie theaters that you go to are actually struggling because people wait for Netflix, or they don't go to the movie theater as often. It still happens, but it's not like it used to be. And so when you're talking about an increase in that sales tax, when you have a family of four, you have 3 kids or something like that, it's a little bit. And then you're gonna have to pay tolls to go to the movie theater, right? Then they're going to increase minimum wage, which is also going to increase the movie ticket, because you got to pay for the high school kid that's taking the ticket, or it's going to go full automation. No, this is just going to, this is like, we are in a death spiral. I mean, that's literally what we're looking at. And they have not once mentioned a cut. Not once. I mean, I'm just, it's absolutely embarrassing. Here's the only thing I can hope. Anyone listening to this, what I need to tell you to do, I know that all of us have friends and family who are Democrats. We do. I mean, and sometimes we get frustrated because all they want to talk about is Russia and Trump and all that nonsense. But it truly is, you have to remind them, you have to. And it's imperative to bring it back to a human level, and how this blind spot that they have for Trump is leading to the demise and the destruction of our state. And all you have to simply say to them is like, can your family really afford anywhere between 15 to 20% more of your earnings going into the state's coffers? Because that's when you add all this stuff up, that's probably what it's going to end up being, right? It's going to be significant. All these little nickel and dime taxes, increase this by 3.5%, increase this by 6%, increase this. The problem is that the Democrats in the state have been so poor at predicting revenues and estimations that I bet this doesn't even cover what they need, because they're unwilling to cut it. They're not changing anything that they're doing. Anything. They're not spending less. I mean, it is absolutely embarrassing that they are so devoid of reality in the position that the state of Connecticut is. I mean, we had a state rep, and I know I played it a few podcasts ago, arguing about how people who are collecting social welfare, people that are collecting EBT benefits, shouldn't be able to use those benefits at Disneyland. And a Democrat said she's uncomfortable challenging or changing, taking that away from people. Are you kidding me? This is what we're dealing with in this state. And we have to find a kinder, gentle way to bring the people who happen to think that Democrats care about us and show them that they don't. They only care about their special interest and making sure that they're fat and fed. Because this is a clear indication that they're not taking care of the hardworking families of the state. When you're talking about taxing safety apparel, the apparel that protects nurses, that protects firemen, that protects police, that protects anyone working in a factory. That's how insane this has gone. I can't even talk about it any longer. But before I want to bring on Chris Davis, because we are going to talk about this more, I just want to touch on the fact it is kind of funny. Chairman Wyman, the Democratic Party chairman, her executive director got a little upset because I simply pointed to a fact that Nancy Wyman was complicit in the destruction of our state financially. Now, Nancy's a very nice woman. We've had a couple laughs together. But at the end of the day, she voted to extend a contract that has furthered our death spiral, that has created a long-term liability that we can't afford. She voted for it. That's her record. Whether the executive director of the Democratic Party wants to admit it or not, Nancy was complicit and a co-conspirator to our destruction. That's not personal. That is a fact. I can like her as a person. She's a lovely woman. She's funny and charming. It's why she's won elections. But the truth is, her voting record speaks for herself. And the fact that in Democrats' minds, questioning and challenging someone's voting record is somehow off limits and shouldn't be discussed. And the reason that this became an issue is because Nancy Wyman issued a statement against the Republican plan to try to solve some of the transportation woes that was created by Democrats, by the way, diverting money away. Actually, play it. I love listening to it. Go ahead, Kathy Austin. Let me hear it.
How many times have we taken money out of the special transportation fund and moved it into the general fund? Well, we've not done that. We diverted some money from going into that, which is different. That's right.
We're trying to solve a problem that the Democrats created because they refused to invest in infrastructure and pretend like somehow they didn't do that. And so part of that solution relies in bonding money based on what exactly bonding is for. Long-term projects that will benefit the state over 30, 40 plus years. But what is infuriating is Nancy Wyman said nothing, stood idly by as we bonded money for splash pads. The Democrats attempted to bond money for the Communist Party. That is true. You can look it up. The information's out there if you want to find it. And what I find so fascinating is the executive director of the Democratic Party, because they're trying to protect Nancy's brand, her brand, demanded that I apologize. And what I find funny about that is what the executive director may not know is that Chairwoman Wyman falsely accused me of something, stood on a press conference on the Capitol step, and demanded I be fired from a job. And she was 100% wrong. In fact, if you go back and watch the press conference, they didn't have all the facts. They didn't know what they were talking about, yet she stood there and demanded I be fired. And when the facts were presented, it didn't change their stance. And I never got an apology. And I think Nancy's a nice woman. I've never held it against her because I understand in politics sometimes things get sticky. But the fact that they're trying to pretend as though Nancy's record and the Democrats' record isn't real is scarier. And we should all pause and think about what that means. Think about the fact that these Democrats don't want you to question their own voting record, that they're always the victim of something, and that somehow it's egregious to talk about voting records. And I get it. I understand. You want to protect the brand of a former governor, former lieutenant governor, and you want to protect this image. But the truth is, if she's going to be critical of something the Republicans try to do to solve a problem, well, you bet your bottom dollar I'm going to hold up that mirror and point every time to the fact that she was a part of an administration that failed the people of this state. And to pretend like that's not a fact, I'm sorry. This is our new reality in the state of Connecticut is crippling taxes, a failing economy, and a middle class that is shrinking, a state population that is shrinking. And to pretend like Nancy Wyman didn't have anything to do with that, I don't know what to tell you. I don't. I really, really, really don't. But I just wanted to point out that I never got an apology and I didn't hold it against Governor Wyman. Because I do. She's funny. She's actually very charming. But I thought the executive director might want to know that. Anyway, up next, Chris Davis. Stay tuned. Well, joining me right now is State Representative Chris Davis. Chris, what towns do you represent?
I have the pleasure of representing East Windsor and Ellington.
And I know you've been doing this for a while now. What has the experience been like this year compared to other years that you've been up there?
Heading into I'm in my ninth session, my fifth term this year. Things are quite a bit different than in years past. Right now we have a Democratic Party that's in place that, although they have large majorities now in both the House and the Senate, they are certainly without direction, I would say. They are being pulled apart from within of the progressive wing of their party, which grew in numbers after the last election.
Before you say anything else, I think the listeners need to know just how crazy, because we actually created a video, I think, with one of the interactions that you had. How crazy are some of these progressive in what they're pushing in the state of Connecticut right now?
Well, I mean, it's the litany of anything you could possibly think of coming out of the ultra progressive, Alexandria Cortez wing of the party, where you have single payer system and the steps necessary to move to that for healthcare in the state included in the Democrats' state budget proposal. You have them wanting to tax everything under the sun from the progressives. If they could, they would tax income taxes even higher and put on these capital gains surcharges that they forced through just the other day in their budget proposal. So it's a litany of every single liberal cause that you could think of that's coming down this year. And unfortunately, after the last election, their numbers have even increased and emboldened them in a sense, with between paid family medical leave, raising the minimum wage, taxing the rich more and more, creating and expanding programs. They had a version of a new Green Deal for Connecticut that thankfully doesn't look like it's moving forward, but it just never seems to end this session with all of these radical liberal ideas that have been attempted.
One, I think they've grossly overestimated their victories in regards to when you look at inside the numbers. They didn't win by 10, 15%. I mean, they were winning by 20 votes. And that's where I think Republicans have an opportunity. But the people listening have to kind of, understand that all is not lost. We can certainly go back and save the state, which is every Republican's intention. I am very curious, and this is the saddest part for me, Chris, and I haven't even told anybody this. This would be the first time that I've even mentioned it to anybody. I was on the phone with a major donor, and I mean, when I say major, I mean the guy's basically a billionaire, right? He owns a huge multinational company, just happens to live right outside of Hartford. You would never know. I called him. Loves the party, believes in the Republican Party. He's basically currently right now, he's moving. He doesn't have a business in the state necessarily. So he was just basically paying taxes on his income and things like that. And he basically told me he's looking at Texas, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And he's not selling his home to another CEO. He's just going to kind of come back, maybe do 6 months in a day. He doesn't know yet, but this is what Democrats don't understand. And it's so tragic, because they're the ones that are absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's an example of what we've seen over the last several years of the billions of dollars in income that have left the state of Connecticut and have not been replaced. And that's one of the reasons why we find ourselves into these budget crunches year after year, because of the continuous efforts to raise taxes has driven out not only the richest of the rich or some of the richest people in the state, but also middle class families, people that make up a core of our income here in the state of Connecticut, and the ability to pay taxes to pay for the services that the liberals keep trying to expand. If more and more of those people keep leaving, there'll be less and less people to take that money from, and the poor individuals that are left here in the state of Connecticut that want to work here, that want to raise their family here, that want to keep their jobs that they have here are going to be squeezed more and more. And we're seeing that with the budget proposal that they just got through committee this week.
Well, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So I'm sitting here looking at a list, and I know this isn't the full list, right? But a couple of the new things that they're talking about taxing. I see a 1% tax on prepared foods at grocery stores and restaurants. 10-cent plastic bag fee, an increase in the filing for LLCs and LLPs, expand sales tax to parking, expand sales tax to safety apparel, which I'm assuming even it could be bike helmets, right, for kids riding bicycles.
I think actually I asked that question. Safety apparel is for like workplace safety kind of items, but they would be things like if you were buying like earmuffs or goggles for weed whacking your yard, or buying safety shoes if you're like a nurse or in a manufacturing.
Right. So let's make things more expensive. Let's make things more expensive for people that punch a clock every day. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Expand sales tax to dry cleaning and laundry. Sir, I mean, this list, 6% tax on ride sharing
adds up to over $1 billion.
6% tax on ride sharing services. So what's funny about that one? Obviously, Democrats are huge, right? Not that we don't care about the environment, but that is certainly something that they talk quite a bit about. So now that we have these technologies like ride sharing and things like that through Uber, and people are on the road less, essentially, it's actually why the gas tax is lower. Now we're going to tax people for trying to do ride sharing. It's absolutely insane. But what I wanted to ask you was which 3 or 4 of these do you think would have the biggest impact on your community? What are you most fearful for your area and for the state in regard to what they've proposed?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that makes me fearful, and it may not necessarily impact directly my community as in straight out of their pocket today, and that's the capital gains surcharge that they want to put on high income earners. I come from a middle class community, that's for sure. Old farming towns in north central Connecticut don't have very many individuals that might be in that top income tax bracket, but if we were to put in the surcharge and charge these individuals an extra 2% on their income, putting our income tax basically at 8.99% for many of these individuals in Connecticut across the state, and they choose to move, or this big individual that you were talking about, this former business leader here in Connecticut that is worth a lot of money, pays a lot of money in taxes, he sees this go through, he leaves. Now, my constituents may not necessarily pay directly that capital gains surcharge, but what they will be paying is more for everything else, because those individuals will leave. The only thing left to do is then to spread out those costs of these expanded services that they want to do onto everybody else in the community. So now they're going to be looking to push the teachers' retirement system onto towns. Well, that's going to be property taxes going up for my constituents. They're going to be looking to raise sales taxes in the future because they got to make up all that income that was lost. So now my constituents are going to be having to pay more that way. So those are the kinds of things that are lost on the liberals and the progressives, that if they drive these individuals out of the state, it's going to be the working class, the people that are struggling every day to make ends meet, that are ultimately going to end up paying the bill, whether it be now or in the future, because of their reckless economic policies.
Well, I think the surcharge on the capital gains, just so that we can kind of expand upon that a little bit more, what very few people understand, a big driving economic engine in the state of Connecticut is actually major hedge funds and these big investors that deal with capital gains on a regular basis. And my opinion is if you're going to go after them, these are not companies that hold brick and mortar, right? They don't own buildings. They can literally walk across the border to another state and cut their expenses by 6-7% overnight. And this is the part that is really scary, because the income tax side of it, for many that don't understand it, it is one of the largest industries in the state. And this could be very disruptive to that industry. I mean, that's what's very hard to understand. We understand these people are making a lot of money, but they also don't have to live here.
No, and quite frankly, those who make that much typically are the ones that have the ability to leave more easily.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
So by doing something like that, you run the risk of driving them out of the state, and it has, like I just described, that ongoing impact on our state going forward. And we see it now with all the budget problems that we're having, these tax increases that will impact all of us across the state, like you just described, sales tax expansions, paying an extra 1% for going out to eat, whether it be you're stopping and getting a $1 menu item at McDonald's, to you're eating your 50th wedding anniversary dinner at a very fancy restaurant. I mean, that kind of stuff, it has to happen, or it gets pushed upon us by these Democrats, and they feel like they have to do this because they're driving the rich out of the state. And if I would much rather get someone paying 6.99%, the current highest income tax rate, rather have them stay here and pay that amount than try to charge them 2% more and have them leave, and now we get 0% from them, and we have to make up hundreds of millions of dollars in lost income taxes because these individuals have made the financial decision to leave the state of Connecticut and potentially move their business and many other people with them, and many other income sources with them out of the state.
Well, what's amazing is we talk about the donor, my friend that I developed this relationship with in terms of being connected to the party. He said to me, he's like, I just live here. My company's not here. I just own my house. And he has a boat, right? He's got a boat in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. He paid that year, and this is what he was absolutely livid about, for just residing in the state of Connecticut. He paid about $1 million. And he's like, it's not like I have all this property. It's not like all I have is my home here and a boat, and I paid $1 million in income tax because this just happens to be my zip code and where my quote unquote permanent residence is. So when you think of it from that perspective, that he doesn't own buildings that he's paying property tax on, he doesn't have a business that he has all these proceeds from. He literally just, it's him, his wife, and his son, and he paid $1 million in income tax in 1 year, and we're going to lose him. I mean, that's what's really, really scary. Now, I do have a question for you, Chris.
Yes.
Is there any way that, and I don't know if this is already true, so I could be speaking out of turn here, but let's take, for example, the 1% meals tax on prepared foods, or some of these other surcharges that they're charging the consumer. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to mandate and I think we should mandate so that the consumer sees why the prices are going up. So, hey, sorry, this is your prepared food tax, this is your sales tax, and literally show on a receipt the percentage that the state of Connecticut is taking from you every time you make a transaction. Is that at all possible?
It certainly could be. I mean, right now, most of the time, it's kind of outlined that, here's your Connecticut sales tax on this item. Because it would be a surcharge, I think most likely you would see it in most bills, that especially the 1% on meals in restaurants. You would probably see that tacked on in a different line item so that they would know that that's different as well. Otherwise, it would even just show it as 7.35% for those particular items. So yeah, I think people will be seeing it on a daily basis, and they'll be seeing it from everything. Like you're talking about things that would impact my constituents too. I mean, it's just from the daily operation, things that people just take and do every single day now. Like watching Netflix will now have a higher sales tax under this proposal. You would have higher taxes on going to the laundromat, or doing your dry cleaning if you have a job that requires that. Those are the types of things that you'll be paying sales tax on that you didn't pay on before, and you'll certainly be noticing it at the end of the day. And that's without even talking about those other proposals out there like tolls that will take
I was just going to say, and
hundreds, if not thousands of dollars from you every year.
And minimum wage, which will also increase price of goods as well.
Yeah, in many cases it will, and unfortunately, and we're seeing this every day, and you're seeing it in part of why the workers went on strike in Stop and Shop, is that as these prices continue to rise, wages or minimum wages increase, new technologies are being developed, ways for businesses to operate without as many employees are happening, and people are going to lose their jobs because the minimum wage was raised. Without question, I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, and this is well, Chris, I have to tell you, as the party chairman, I just want to thank you. I know you guys are up there fighting every day, and it's getting more and more ludicrous. And frankly, I think that the Democrats are just in denial over where Connecticut is. I mean, we're the only state in the country that is not benefiting during this economic boom. And frankly, what I'm terrified of is economies are cyclical. So there's going to be a downturn at some point, right? It straightens out or flattens out, whatever it is. And Connecticut has benefited zero from the upswing, the uptick. When that downtick comes, it's only going to get that much worse for us.
Yeah, and I think you see that with Connecticut's economic growth at only about 1%. And I wouldn't even be surprised if that gets adjusted downward when they look deeper into the numbers going forward, while the rest of the country is growing. Connecticut, we're losing jobs, while the rest of the country, we now have the lowest unemployment rate in just about 50 years today. That just came out, but Connecticut's losing jobs. So, if we make a decision to drive these businesses out of the state of Connecticut, drive these high income individuals to move out of the state of Connecticut, it's going to be the individuals that are just here trying to get by, that are trying to raise their families, trying to live their best lives here in the state of Connecticut, that are going to be the ones picking up the bill if these policies move forward.
They're trapped here. They're 100% trapped here. And one of the things that makes me laugh, too, about that 1% economic growth here in Connecticut, no one recognizes that it's because of the fact that Connecticut exports a ton in military and defense, which all has everything to do with.
Yeah, and increases under the Trump administration and some of the things that he's been looking to build more submarines and more fighter jets and more helicopters for our military to finally give them what they've needed and they've been struggling to have for many, many years. So those kinds of things have certainly improved Connecticut's economy. We have potentially thousands of jobs available in those sectors, but we don't have the people to meet those needs because people have been fleeing our state for years and years and years. And we don't have the individuals with those skill sets left to fill those jobs. So
I didn't even think of it from that perspective, Chris, but you're 100% right. And I think that's also part that's so disturbing about the state is that a majority of our growth has come from those industries. And even then it's weak because no one's here. It could be that much better.
I would hope it could be in the future because of the contracts that have been signed. These are long-term things. We're trying to build up The training programs, especially down in southeastern Connecticut, as we know, needs the economic recovery even more than in some other parts of the state. We're trying to build up that economy down there with training programs, with our community colleges, with private training providers to get them so that individuals can work at Electric Boat and work on these new submarines, these multi-billion-dollar agreements with the federal government. But we haven't been able to keep pace, and we need to keep investing in those types of programs to try to grow our economy that way. Because quite frankly, JR, the only way we're getting out of this mess is if we grow our economy. That's how we balance our budget. That's how we, generate the jobs that we need is by having a stronger base of businesses that want to continue to grow and to entice businesses that are maybe elsewhere to come here. And quite frankly, with some of these policies, I just don't really see that being something that happens on a regular basis moving forward, unless things begin to change.
Well, Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's short notice, but I really do appreciate taking the time and talking with me and the listeners about how scary and worrisome the state of Connecticut is. And I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the work that you guys put in. Driving up there every day, dealing with some crazy things. If anyone wants to just completely be shocked or think that they're in the twilight zone, watch some of the CTN hearings when they're talking about some of these things, and not just to your point when you're talking about the bicycle helmets, but when we're talking about reforming the fact that we have people who are on welfare with the EBT cards going to Disney World.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. The way the Democrats will defend spending your money or wastefully spending taxpayers' money. It's really crazy. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that, JR. And I'll say one of the most asinine things I've heard in a long time as far as, trying to develop economic policy is I was reading just recently that the reason why the progressives wanted this 2% surcharge on capital gains, and they would go even further if they can, trust me, they want it to be even higher and go after people even more for more taxes. But the reason why they want to do that is because individuals received tax reductions under the tax plan that was passed in 2017 by the federal government. So if they got a reduction in taxes and they were making investments and growing the economy both here and across the country, that these progressives believe, well, we should be taking more from them because they got a break, here in Connecticut. Why would we want to do something that tries to put the halt on the small amount of growth that we have here in the state? Why would we want to try to prevent growing our economy, trying to prevent people making investments in our state? And that's directly what a capital gain is. It's a improvement on an investment that you made. Why would we want to go after those people if the only way we get out of this is by encouraging that economic growth? And that's the thing that just boggles my mind with these liberal policies, that they are just completely backwards and going to set us back, hopefully, hopefully not years and decades by doing some of these things. And
but Chris,
go ahead.
I was going to say they don't actually believe that the economy is improving because of the tax cuts, right? They think the economy is terrible. What they don't realize, the economy in Connecticut's terrible because of them. Right? Yeah. So they can't own up to that. So they pretend as though things are not great around the country, and therefore, the Trump tax cuts didn't work. It just poured money in people's pockets, and so we should get a cut of that money. And the reality is the tax cuts have worked based on the fact of I remember when the Democrats laughed at the idea when Trump said we should average a 3% GDP, and they all said it would never happen. Well, so far for 3 years, it's happened.
Sure.
And so that's what I always have to chuckle at when I talk about how the economy is doing. And what's hard is because in Connecticut, it's not doing well. So they think that's Trump's fault. It's not.
No, it's failed economic policies, especially for the last 8 years, where you saw multiple tax increase, income tax increases, but also, the largest tax increases in state history, one after another. And now with this proposal, if you add in tolls, you're looking at a tax increase.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Chris. Everyone, Chris Davis, State Representative, and thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, JR.